Anybody here interested in finance? You should all be interested in finance. Okay, so the title of this talk is called MoneyVis, Open Bank Transaction Data for Visualization and Beyond. And this is actually done with some master students here at the University of Nottingham, actually. So Elif is a former PhD student, and these people are masters or former master students. And we sort of worked on this as a kind of, I don't know what you call it, maybe a side project or a closely related project to a master's thesis. So this one also has a background story, this paper. So the original inspiration behind this topic was a collaboration with a company called Oakbrook, based in Nottingham actually, based in the city center. And Oakbrook, what they do is they make recommendations on loans. So somebody applies for a loan, they fill out an application. As part of that application, they submit their bank records for one year's worth of bank transactions. And then Oakbrook writes software that analyzes the bank transactions, assesses the application, and then provides some recommendations about should this person get a loan or not? Are they going to get a loan? And the decision is usually very, very quick, like within 10 seconds or something like that. So if you need a fast loan, you can apply for one at Oakbrook. Yeah. So they specialize in risk assessment for lending, and they have a database with several millions of bank transactions. And we wanted to develop some visual, let's say some visual designs to inform risk assessment in conjunction with bank transactions. But what ended up really happening is there were so many administrative hurdles to setting up this collaboration, we were not able to use Oakbrook's bank transaction data in time for the master students. So we came up with a plan B, and we found a volunteer who let us see their bank transaction data and use that instead. So instead of using Oakbrook's data, we found a volunteer. And then we took that data, we anonymized it, we remove all the names and any identifying information, and then we released it we make it an open source data set. So it's the first open source data set of its kind, actually. So with the evolution of finance technology, the importance of analyzing financial transactions is growing, right? I think everybody can understand that the number of financial transactions is growing, right? It's probably uncountable, but it's in the billions every day. However, real bank transaction data is very difficult to access, to get a hold of, right? Due to privacy and security concerns. Everybody wants to protect their privacy, and every bank wants to protect their, has a high barrier of security. So this is the first real-world anonymized open retail bank transaction data set. This is the fundamental contribution of this work. So the first open bank transaction data set from an anonymized retail customer. We also provide manual, semi-automatic, and automatic categorizations of each transaction. And we have some initial imperfect visual explorations or images of the data to look at for anyone that's interested. In the visualization community, there are some classic data sets. So we're not the first group to release a data set to the visualization community. And if you go back to in the history of computer graphics and visualization, you find these what we call classic data sets. So a long time ago, the University of Utah released a teapot data set probably in the 70s or something like that. And then Georgia Tech released the so-called Stanford Bunny data set. And then Roger Crofis of Ohio State University released the Tornado data set. And then there were things like the Iris data set and the CARS data set released later on. These data sets are used and they appear over and over and over again in the literature, in the visualization literature, because they're open access and they can be used to test and show the validity of algorithms, right, and other visualization contributions. So we're hoping that, you know, the money data set will also evolve into a classic data set for things like financial analysis and multivariate visualization, and also event-based visualization. Of course, there is a lot of related work in the visualization of financial data and the visual analysis of financial data. We're not going to go through it, but if you look carefully at the data that they're analyzing, generally you are not allowed to see that data. So you can look through the financial literature, but it's really difficult to find data that's open and can be accessed by the reader. The transaction data spans 7 years, July 2015 to July 2022. There are over 6,500 retail bank transactions, and each transaction has a date, a type, a description, an amount, and an ending balance is a type. And there you can also access the data. There's a link on my webpage where you see the paper, along with the paper as well, if anybody's interested. And the categorization, so we tried three different kinds of, well, we looked at three different aspects, let's say. We tried a purely manual classification or categorization of the data, where we would go through the records and we would assign some sort of activity to each transaction. For example, shopping, travel, entertainment, food, dining, Amazon, services, general services, health, fitness, clothing, paycheck, savings, mortgage, and so on. So we tried to kind of come up with our own set of categories manually, right? If you sort the transactions by description, then all the ones with the same description can be, you know, put together, and then you can assign them all to the same type, right? So you can speed up that manual process. Of course, that's imperfect. We also tried a semi-automatic approach using Python. So instead of doing it manually, using a Python script, which also involves manual effort to assign categories. You can get a copy of that Python script from GitHub, from that URL, and then the bank itself automatically associates a category with each transaction, right? So that's what the bank transactions look like, right? The automatic ones. Here we have some very imperfect initial images. So this is an overview that shows the 7 years, right? The first year, 2015, is only a half of a year, right? And these are the automatic categories, right, as they evolve over the years, right? And we can see the evolution of the different categories, and we can see, for example, that 2021 is an outlier year compared to the others. We can see, for example, just that the number of transactions is higher that year. And here's a sunburst chart that shows also the total incoming and outgoing transactions, not the amounts, just the numbers of transactions. Oh wait, no, I got it wrong. The segments are based on the total amount rather than the number of transactions. And the color choice, the color mapping here is arbitrary. Okay, that's my 9.5 minutes. Thank you for your attention, everybody. Are there any questions? questions about the open bank transaction data set?